Continuing. For the Lord's sake, yield to the people who have authority in this world, the king who is the highest authority, and the leaders who are sent by him to punish those who do wrong and to praise those who do right. It is God's desire that by doing good, you should stop foolish people from saying stupid things about you. Live as free people, but don't use your freedom as an excuse to do evil. Live as servants of God and show respect for all people. Love the brothers and sisters of God's family and respect God and honor the king. This one's a hard one, isn't it? Yield to the people who have authority in this world, the king who is the highest authority. Now, in the days of King David or King Solomon, that may be so. But now that the worldly leaders have taken over, obviously it's a authority from a kingship that is based on the world. There were good kings and there were bad kings in the Old Testament. And our Father in heaven has given us the truth. He tells us who were the good kings and who were the bad kings. But even though they were bad kings, their authority and their scepter rule, people were supposed to follow. It says here that, the leaders who are sent by him to punish those who do wrong and to praise those who do right. But you could ask yourself, wasn't Peter doing right? Wasn't the early Christians doing right? Wasn't Paul doing right? Wasn't Stephen doing right? But they were punished by the authority. Do you see? Now, they were punished for doing right. If they were doing wrong, that would be a different thing. But they were punished for doing the right thing. Praise those who do right. It is God's desire that by doing good, you should stop foolish people from saying stupid things about you. Live as free people, but do not use your freedom as an excuse to do evil. You see, that's what the Jews didn't like, that we had been given this freedom, that the Spirit was in us, the spiritual law was now in us. It was no longer out there on a stone, and the instructions of the Torah law and the Talmudic oral tradition of the law. Ours was inward. And what Peter is saying is don't treat it as liberal, so that you have become so free from the Torah law that you use it as an excuse to do what you want. Some people say that Christians can do what they want, and then the next day they can ask for forgiveness, and then go out and commit the same crime. And there's some truth in that. There are Christians that do that. There are people that do that. And that's what Peter's saying here. Don't be like that. Don't do that. This is it's still a strict understanding of what we're supposed to be doing. Live as free people, because we are free. We're no longer under that law, if you like, of the stone. But do not use your freedom as an excuse to do evil. Live as servants of God and show respect for all people and love the brothers and sisters of God's family. Respect God and honour the king. Now, to me, there is only one king, and that is Jesus Christ. But there is a king in England, and he has a lot of authority, and he has his government, and the government has a lot of authority over the land, and they rule the land. It doesn't matter where you go in the world, there's going to be an authority that rules the land, and that authority will tell you what to do. It's a kind of an order thing. Just remember that when Israel's sins were so abhorrent to our Father, he brought other nations in to take over them. And the authority of the other nations, the kings of the other nations, took over them and made them subservient. They became slaves to this new nation that had come in. Remember when Jesus was being taken to Pontius Pilate, and Pontius Pilate, was talking to Jesus, and Pontius Pilate made the comment that he had the power to kill him. He had the power of life and death. And Jesus says to him, you didn't get that power yourself. That power came from God. Your authority over me has come from God. And that's the crux here. You don't hear Paul moaning about being whipped. You don't hear Paul moaning about being beaten. You don't hear Peter moaning about being whipped and beaten or put in prison. You don't even hear Paul moaning and Peter moaning about being killed by the authority, Rome. Remember, Nero, a most horrid ruler and king, was in power when Peter and Paul and these Christians, these apostles, were preaching the word. And you would say to yourself, well, how can Peter tell us to respect authority of the king when it's such as somebody like Nero? But I think what Peter's trying to say is we live in the grace of God where we are, what we've been born into, and what we're going through. And if we are to live, or if we are to die, then we die because the Father wanted it that way. Remember, Jesus says, in the marketplace, 2 sparrows don't fall unless God knows about it. In another place, Jesus says, all the hairs on your head have been counted. In other words, our Father knows you specifically. And what you're going to go through, or what you're not going to go through, is his business. And Peter and Paul were alive in the time of Nero, and that was it. They could have been born and been alive in a different time when there was a different king, but they didn't. But it's about, how can I say this? It's about living in the will of the Creator. It's about living under the authority of our Creator. Jesus is the King, but on earth there are earthly kings. And whatever nation you live in, they rule over you. You can't go to the king and kill that king if he is unruly or evil. You can't even take him from his throne. Only God can take that king if he is a bad king from his throne. And remember, Nero's dead. Pontius Pilate's dead. King David has gone. Solomon has gone. We're all individual, and we will all be judged by our Father through Jesus Christ. And that's why Peter's saying, it's a hard one, I know, because I myself, exactly the same. I can't stand the kings and the governments. I can't stand them. They annoy me, and there's a kind of, I don't know, agitation wells up. But I'm being told here, for the Lord's sake, yield to the people who have authority in this world, the king who is the highest authority, and the leaders who are sent by him to punish those who do wrong and praise those who do right. It's God's desire that by doing good you shall stop foolish people from saying stupid things. Live as free people, but do not use your freedom as an excuse to do evil. Live as servants of God, and show respect for all people. Love the brothers and sisters of God's family, respect God, and honour the king. I can feel, I can I can hear your mind saying, what's he talking about? I can't stand the king. What is he talking about? Honour the king is what it says here. And Peter again keeps saying it. Love the brothers and sisters. That's our role as children of God through Jesus Christ, is love. Jesus suffered under the authority of the Romans and the authority of the Pharisees. Peter and Paul and Stephen and the apostles suffered under the authority of the kings of that day, Nero, whoever. It's no difference for us. In fact, you don't hear Paul or Peter moan at all about Nero or about the king, do you? What's going to be is going to be for them as kings and as men. And what's going to be is going to be for us and for me as a man, and for you as a man or a woman. It's not our job is not to fight and be in a revolution against the king, whether he is good or whether he is evil. Our job is just to love our brothers and sisters and to preach Christ and to be with Christ. But I agree, not an easy one. Thank you.